This is a conspiracy. That's what this is. One big damn conspiracy! And everyone's in on it! I know what's going on.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
The person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it.
Did you see the memo about this?
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this.
Don't you see what this means? This is it! This is the beginning of everything! I've been waiting for this all my life!
Welcome to episode 75 of your Missing the Point podcast, where we discuss the weird, the wonderful, and the downright bizarre aspects of life, as we have conversations with people from all over the world. Well, I've got to say, the black pills are piling up over here. Digital ID laws, misinformation and disinformation bills, online community standard laws, all designed at policing not just your speech, but our very thoughts. The Orwellian nightmarescape is becoming an even more stark reality. Combine this with state-paid actors and sanctioned influencers. Who can we look to for the truth? How do we know what we're looking at is truthful? How do we know what's a reality? To help me cover these topics and more, I'm joined by a fantastic guest, woman who sifts through all the propaganda and the psyops, friend of the show, Brandy. Welcome, Brandy.
Hey.
I was just saying before we started recording on this, that you're one of the very few people I think I can go to for this conversation, purely based on it's team politics again. All around the Western world, we're starting to have snap elections or elections that are finally come to their cycle. The 4-year terms are up. And people just fall back in line with team politics. It's team red, team blue, and they think they can vote their way out of these types of situations. But I thought what's happened over the past 4 or 5 years would have woken a few people up, but it doesn't seem to be the case, does it, Brandy?
No, not a bit. No, no. It seems like whenever I don't know if it's just because people like to advertise their ideals and opinions, or if they just feel like they have to choose a side. Like it's when somebody, especially here, I mean, even like when I went to Mexico, I was asked about Trump in Mexico, and I was like, why would y'all even care? Why would you care? What matter does it make? And I was like, no, you might get the typical reaction or reply from some of the people you asked, but I was like, I literally don't care because both sides are running on the same tracks. So it doesn't matter. And he just looked at me for a minute and he was like, okay. And I was like, does voting matter here? And he laughed. I said, exactly.
Is it a case of confirmation bias that during these election periods and cycles that you do tend to get a lot of the popular talking points, and they try to really sell it to you to the point where people go, yeah, okay, maybe we can vote our way out of this situation because candidate A is talking about all things that I really think are important, but we know the historical precedent has been set that consecutive governments just within our lifetimes continually lie. Like the old adage is, how do you know a politician is lying? Well, their lips are moving. We're continually falling for the lies again and again and again. It's like a domestic violence household where we keep falling for the abuser's love, and they hit us every now and again, but then they're really nice and they give us a back rub and they make a draw bath for us, and it's all lovey-dovey for a little while. And then after that little honeymoon period's gone again, it's back to the violence. It seems to be the domestic abuse situation within governance.
Trauma-based voting?
Mm-hmm. Trauma-based government in a lot of ways, I think, because the things that are happening, not just in Australia in regards to our free speech, but it seems to be happening across the Western world, is that there's all these types of bills like Restrict Acts, misinformation, disinformation, community standards laws online. All of these things are happening roughly at the same time, and it doesn't come across as an organic type of a choice where Australia, say, looked at the UK and went, you know what, we like what they're doing with their online safety bill, so we're going to replicate it. No, no, no. It seems as if someone at a higher position at some kind of an international level has made a decision and the countries just start to roll this stuff out. So if we're looking at this very attack on our own free speech and our ability to think and express our ideas, how can we think that's okay? We've been brought up in the Western world to look at the democratic process, our freedom of speech, all these innate valuable rights we all share as human beings are so important, but they're literally being thrown out the window and no one seems to notice or care.
And this was so stupid. I guess in France, well, they're like going through the same thing, but what I don't ever remember her name, but is it Marconi's supposed wife or whatever? She actually took some of their citizens to court for slander for saying that she was a man. And it was from a YouTube video. And she won. Like, they had to pay her money. And I was like, why the hell does she need money at all? And why should she even care? You're supposed to be a politician's wife, right? Why would two individuals bother you to the point where you felt the need to take them to court when you could not even be bothered to pay attention to everybody else who has issues in your own country? But those two right there needed to be taken care of right then and there. You couldn't take care of any other issues politically, but them two right there said that you used to be a man, and that bothered you.
Well, yeah, it's setting the tone, isn't it? That there's certain things they will crack down on, ones that they won't. But whatever happened to water off a duck's back when you're told growing up, be the bigger person? If someone's throwing things at you, hurtful words or being a bully, you ignore it and you can kind of push through, because that's the ultimate thing that if it is truly like slanderous conduct, by ignoring it and not really giving it airtime, that's the best way to fight back against it. Now, right. I would understand slander if you are, say, a prominent businessman or person in the community and you are directly being impacted financially because of, say, made up misinformation, what have you, all these talking points I like to use. But she's the president's wife. How is she down a few quid or a few dollars based on a few of those YouTube videos? She's not being impacted one minute.
Not from those pictures of her being on a yacht. No.
Well, maybe the payouts from those YouTube people paid for a caviar for the weekend. I don't
know. A towel boy for 2 hours. About it.
Towel boy for her or a towel boy from Macron?
Both. It was a finger cuff situation.
But you're so right. It seems like there's definitely a concerted effort by governments around the world to make examples of people. And one of the big ones we have seen recently within the Anglo-sphere is the racial riots that occurred after the poor little girls in the United Kingdom was stabbed by a knife attacker. Now, there was some misinformation in regards to that, where the identity of the man was put out and it was said he was a migrant. He didn't end up being a migrant, but I think the racial undertones and concerns around migration are still a valid talking point for the majority of Brits. There's a huge population with Britain which don't like the way the country's headed with the mass migration and the issues it's caused. And naturally, these people were fed up and angry, so they went out and rioted. Now, the issue is, because of their digital online laws and safety acts that they have, people who are saying, I don't want migrants in the country, or I don't think these people should be here, they can't express their opinions without facing jail time. So much so that Scotland Yard has made a concerted effort to go out and try to extradite Americans, Australians, Canadians, Kiwis, other people around the world for making posts about their country, which, ironically, with the way the Five Eyes nations are set up and international terrorism laws, if they really want to get someone from another country, they can get you. We saw that with Snowden. We saw it with other big profile people. If they want you, they will get you. But the biggest concern around all of this is that they're releasing hardened criminals from the overcrowded prison population in the United Kingdom to put people inside who made social media posts.
Yes.
So rapists, hardcore felons, people who commit extremely violent crimes are being released early so they can free up rooms and cells for Jim the boomer who just so doesn't happen to like Pakistani people and express his opinion, they're now putting those people in jail. Now, whether these people are racist or not racist, it doesn't really matter. They're expressing an opinion that should not be targetable by law and prison time. And this is just a massive concern because what a government deems today to be illegal, another successive government who might be of the opposite side of politics, say a Democrat, a Libertarian, what have you, they can pinpoint that same law against someone else and target them. This isn't a singular law that's being used by, say, the left or the right. It's a uniparty deal on this because they can wield it with power as they see fit.
Right. And for them to frame it as a race thing, and nobody has ever specifically in any of these situations been like, well, they're browner than me. Like, that is totally not the problem. It was not the problem. It's the problem that you don't care who you bring in. They don't have to be documented. They're getting money that their own citizens can't get access to live beyond the means of their own citizens. They are not able to get assistance from their own government because they either like make $1 more or they have to be put on a waiting list, especially the way their medical system works over there. They are waitlisted for so much that these people just came over here and got for free. So they're not being racist. They are pointing out a failure in their so-called government to protect the rights of their own citizens. But then they're turning around saying, we don't really care if you're a citizen or not. These people over here are more important to us. And if you say anything otherwise, we'll just put you in jail and we'll give them your house.
Well, yeah. And I think on top of that, the real conversation is, and I think a lot of Western countries have been thrust into this problem, that what is the cultural identity of your nation? There's an idea that the government puts forward. This is what an Australian is. This is what an American is. This is what a British citizen is. But the lived experience of cultural identity is very different from a government perspective than from what it is from the lived people of that country. And I think the biggest issue we're seeing is it's not necessarily a racist issue or a racist response to a lot of things that are happening with mass migration. It's a cultural identity issue. What does it mean to be British? What does it mean to be Australian in the modern age when you're getting influxes of 1.2 million people over the case of a year in Australia's case, when we're only a population of 26 million? That's a lot of people all at once that may not necessarily have the time to integrate into what Australian culture is. And at that point, we're getting this mixed soup of different cultures and different identities. And we're kind of sold on the global stage that this is multiculturalism and it's fine. But at what point does the scale tip of what is the Western identity and culture versus the people that are being imported into a country? And this shouldn't be a conversation that should be seen as a racist take. This is just a genuine dialectic that people need to start having. For heaven's sakes, in Britain, they have a history of this. At one point, they expelled all the Normans. There was a Dane law, and a Danish law rather, that Danes had a certain area of land within the United Kingdom. And then the British felt that, you know what, these Danes are really starting to put their culture into ours, which we don't like. And they expelled all the Danish people overnight. You know, this type of thing does happen. I'm not proposing that there should be a mass expulsion of people from certain countries, but there really needs to be a conversation around what it means to be British, American, Australian, Canadian, South African, what have you, because there's multi-generations of people who have an idea in their head already of what they are and who they represent, and the government's telling them that that's not true and your lived experience is a lie.
Well, the easiest way to erase a sense of identity and purpose is to take away that civilization's culture, to where you can't point to a point in time where you don't have an identity. So in order to erase that identity, you have to bring in. And another thing is, I don't think that these people who are coming in, it's kind of unfair to them also, because they were sold a lie. They were thinking, oh, it's okay, we'll get over here and we're going to get all this stuff and we're going to be accepted and we're going to be put out into the community. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. They are putting these people in danger purposely So it's a two-way street. Not only do they not care about their own citizens, they really don't care about who they're bringing in. It's only to cause chaos so that they can hide in the background and put forth things that they wanted to put in that they know good and well, if people were paying attention, they would riot even more.
In Australia, in the last day or so, in one of our largest states, Queensland, they recently passed a bill which has now come into law that anything Queenslanders say online, on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, what have you, that's now considered a public space. And as a public space, you're now liable under laws in regards to, say, attacking minorities. If the government, the police, someone, an individual feels like that they're being targeted by the basis of the color of their skin, their religion, their creed, their sexual orientation, what have you, they can now charge people under this law, which has an ultimate time of 3 years in prison. So we're in this state now where it's a protection. It's a law. It's not an equal application of this law. It doesn't protect all Australians. It protects minorities. And by that very metric, we're segregating Westerners in every country we see. By the very term minorities, we're segregating them from the broader population. So if we want a true equal distribution of this law, should it not just be for all Americans, for all Australians? But it's not. We've seen that tip scale where the identity of the Australian, the American, yours is second tier within the legal system to protect minorities. And this in itself is it flies in the face of what true representation means. Like the left fought throughout the 60s for racial rights and the rights of African Americans and women. And it seems like it's gone completely the other way around, where the only way they're protecting themselves is by segregating and the whole idea of victim status.
Right. And that in itself is racist. You're racist against your own citizens, the people who identify as a natural citizen. You are discriminating against with your laws and your ethics and whatever else it is. So it's almost, well, it's hypocrisy all around. But yeah, I mean, even over here, when it comes to stuff like that, there's a whole big thing about reverse racism, which always seemed like it was kind of harder for you to prove unless somebody was just being overtly, racist. And I mean, there are some people here, and I think it's just more of a propaganda piece that they're paid to incite situations, but, where they will come straight out and be like, well, I don't like white people, period. I just don't like white people. And it's like, well, that's racist. And they're like, no, only white people can be racist. And I'm like, well, no, that's idiot logic right there. So they try to inject that as well. It's like, well, no, if you are white, no matter where you are in the globe, if you have an opinion that involves anybody else that they consider to be a protected status, then it's racist. And it's like, no, I'm not doing it based on what this is what I'm pretty sure they're going to do too. They're going to end up changing the definition of race, just like they do everything else, to include everything they need to fit up underneath that so that their laws can properly put you in your place.
Yeah, they'll probably, like they've been talking about the idea of anglicized or Western European people being privileged as a race because of all the things that history has provided for us, the accomplishments that we've created as a people. But now they're saying that is the plunders of war, it's colonization, it's all these things that they're saying have put us at an unfair advantage to other races, where that in itself it breeds more racism from one of either side, because there are genuine racists out there. Don't get me wrong. There are people out there who say some horrendous things about people who are colored folk, who are African American, who are Asian, who are Indian, what have you. Pick any race on the planet. There's some atrocious racists out there. I agree. But it's like everyone within the, say, specific race of Western Europeans has been tarred with that same brush. And you can't have a genuine conversation about race, ethnicities, groups, theologies anymore without automatically being in the position of being the oppressor, which is the dialectic which they've done really well at weaponizing. But I think you're right. They will get to a point where they're going to legalise this and say that anyone of Northern European ancestry automatically is set in a position where they're a second-class citizen when it comes to the law.
And if they keep on, this is going to be their catch-22 here, is if they keep on the influx that they are, in certain situations, like if you are in a city that's being overran and the amount of immigrants, illegals, that they bring in, if they start outnumbering the actual residents in that town, how are the residents now not the minority?
Well, hasn't this happened in a town within the United States, and where there was a large influx of Haitian migrants over a short period of time, where they actually wasn't a minority, but it was a sizable chunk. I think they ended up being 30% of the town's population within the space of 12 months. Like, that's a big influx of culture change in a small period of time.
Well, you know what? And this doesn't make sense either. It just seems like at some point they were told that they didn't even have to abide by any laws when they get here. Because when you go to a different country, or just even when, like around here, when we go to different states have different laws. And you are subject to those laws when you get there. You don't say, oh, well, in my state or, oh, in my culture, I can do all these things, so you better respect me. No, you are here. This is how we do stuff. And if it's against the law for our citizens to do it, well, while you are here, it is also against the law for you to do it. And if so, then you're going to jail. Or if you're not from here, you're getting the hell back out. You just got to go. And one of the, definitely, certain felons, depending on what it is that they have been put in jail for and stuff like that. I mean, besides the fact that they won't be able to have a weapon, they won't even be able to travel to other countries. So why the hell is it open borders for murderers and rapists to come over here? Not only that, but people who are active duty that want to desert their military, they're allowed over here. Freshly paroled people, it doesn't even matter, from Ukraine, Afghanistan, anybody that's been paroled in less than a year, come on over. You can get Medicaid, you can get food assistance, you can get housing assistance. Come on over.
This is the joke. It's certainly the open door policy for America at the moment for illegals, because I looked at the price of what it would be to, say, fly to America in costs, as paying as an Australian who wanted to visit the States. It'd actually be financially better off for me to fly to Mexico on a cheaper flight, cross the border illegally, get a $6,000 American card that's given to a lot of these illegals, plus a phone, get put up a hotel for a little while, and then I could decide to fly back to Australia, and I would be better off financially. I would be making money from that single loop transaction. Like, this is the wild thing. People can get into America and make money.
No. While our own people are literally being told, no, we can't give you Medicaid, which is like our insurance here, because you make too much money. And it doesn't matter. It can be $1. It can be just a fraction. It's like, no, we can't help you because of that. We can't give you any food assistance because you make too much money. And then to make it so, the amount of paperwork you have to fill out and bring in, you have to bring your IRS statements, you have to bring in pay statements, pay stubs, everything. These people, for undocumented people, it says NA underneath paperwork. Doesn't even apply to them. Well, there's people right now, like, I work in mental health, and when we have people that are either homeless or they've been institutionalized for a while, and if they try to come back out and like integrate back into the community and get these services and such, you have to find their social security card. If not, you have to go order one. You have to find their birth certificate. You got to get them an ID. Well, why do you have to do all of that to get these people the health care that they need but these people being fast tracked. So you can't even take care of these people who are supposed to be another protected class because they come before them.
Now, if you're a conspiratorial minded person, you would think that all of this is being done on purpose to, say, collapse a country or at least ignite and stoke those disgusting feelings of racism towards other people, because we're in a situation where the average nationalized American, the average Australian, the average Brit, the average Kiwi, the average Canadian, they are doing it tough. Cost of living is going through the roof. There's housing crisis in Australia. There's people living on the streets. There's people who can't get jobs. There's people who can't afford medication. While at the same time, en masse, governments are bringing in people that seem to be reaping all the benefits. And what does that do collectively? It stokes division and hatreds towards people that shouldn't really exist there because of the way they're being treated. To put it in scale, like I mentioned before, Australia has a small population of 26 million. And in the space of our current serving Prime Minister, less than 3 years, he's brought in 1.5 million immigrants into the country. Not all of them are from non-Western nations, but a large majority of them are. So statistically, we've had an increase of 5.7% in our population over the space of less than 2 to 3 years. That is a massive, massive change to the makeup of a country overnight. All of this is occurring, mind you, when there's a housing crisis. There's Australians living on the street, living in their cars while still working full-time and being taxed. I live in a regional part of the country that I had never ever seen a homeless person until I went to a major city as a kid. And now I see homeless people living on the streets in my hometown. They are living in tents on the side of the road, up against buildings. There's a tent community down near a river because that's their source of water to wash their clothes and things. In a first world country, this should not exist. And it seems that the very actions that governments are doing around the world are accelerating this. And this is where my conspiratorial mind comes into it. They're doing it to the point where people collectively chimp out, and we do have those racial divisions that explode. And I think you're starting to see elements of that with the riots that occurred in the UK. That may just be the embers slowly starting to pop now. But it seems like it's the only outcome that could possibly occur from this if it's allowed to continue.
Well, I'll say they don't like when you bring up that whole, it's the Keller Greek plan about
Yes.
them.
Wow.
But even like in Australia, I don't think people understand. They're like, well, that's a huge country. Okay, yeah, it is. However, there's only a small portion of that entire country that can actually be made into a livable area. You can't. It's not just open free land and everybody's got somewhere to go. No, there's parts out there you can't live out there. Like just like Canada, half of Canada, everybody lives closer to the U.S. border. Why? Because it's cold as hell. You can't live up there. In the U.S., though, it's pretty much open fields. They're like, no, they're already attacking farmers where most people don't really live in the Midwest because it's huge farming communities, but they're coming in and they're attacking that. And then it's like weird where it is they are sending people. Like, why would you be sending whole populations to Shitville, Ohio? Like, that's kind of weird. But I think, too, especially here, I think that they were expecting us to pop off just a little bit more because we are an area that does have that right to shoot first and ask questions later. Like if there's somebody here on my land, they're trespassing, I don't know who they are, I can shoot them and I may not even need to call the police at all because they were trespassing. I don't know who you are. You were trespassing. It's private property. And it's the same thing with that squatters' rights situation. That's breaking and entering. I'm allowed to shoot you if you try to break in my house. I don't have to ask what you're doing. I don't have to do none of that. I can kill you right at my doorstep. And I think they were thinking, and I don't understand why it hadn't happened yet, but I think that they were thinking these people are going to come out guns blazing And then we'll be able to point and be like, oh my God, look at these gun hate toting Americans and look how racist they are. We really have to take away these guns. They wanted that to happen. And it really hasn't happened to the degree. And again, I'm shocked because I think that's the only way it's really going to get at least these illegals' attentions. If they know, don't go to America, they do not like us, we have been lied to, and they will kill you. But
I think they've been trying very, very hard with that in regards to the likes of Patriot Front and all these Fed ops that they're trying to, stir up the frenzy amongst the American population, who are very well armed in many states and, like you said, have the rights to do things that many other Westerners just can't even imagine to be possible. You're in a perfect position where they need that kind of collective freak out towards the invading illegals to justify massive gun control across the board in America. And ironically, I think the only person that can do that in America is going to be a Trump type person.
Well, they are going to try that, but they are going to have to selectively whitewash that, because it's not only what they want. It's not going to be they are pushing them in the most whitest areas possible because they want to do that. But it's not just, this white person over here, George and Nancy, they don't like them. No. It's not even that. Every race that's over here that has been in the U.S., who are here legally, who pay these taxes, who have been living this bullshit that they've been putting us through, are collectively saying, hey, we don't like the shit, we don't like you, and we don't like the situation. So that is kind of messing with their plan when they're like, well, we can't have this black guy over here saying, I don't give a shit what color you are. You can be as black as me. I'm not tolerating your bullshit. Don't come over here with your crap. They can't have that. They can't have an Asian lady walk outside her house and defend herself and her house and be like, oh my God, she's so racist, because it backfires on them. So they have to strategize a little bit more. So on top of this, now we have this mad rash of online random Facebook and Instagram posts from supposed kids being like, well, we're going to shoot up 40 schools. How does that make sense that an 11-year-old, because this just happened right here where I live, that an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old could make a post and randomly include 40 schools in 3 or 4 different counties, and then 2 counties over, they have the same similar situation occur, and it's happening all over the U.S. No, now they have to do it another way. They got to reframe it and be like, oh my God, it's their kids. Now, we really need to take away these guns because they can't do it because we haven't done it with the illegals yet.
They've done something very similar in Australia where we've got a history in our country of we're very young. We haven't had many migrants come in over an extended period of time. They've all come in collectively in large allotments, say the end of the Vietnam War, the War on Terror. We've had the Civil War in Lebanon. We had big influxes of people. We take people into our country after warfare, and we're seen as a nice country that we open our arms to people who are in need. We pride ourselves on that. We always root for the underdog and we help people who need it. The issue there is that because of the War on Terror, it stoked this idea of anti-Islam, anti-Arab racism within the community to the point where our own intelligence apparatus, ASIO, they've actively been caught out radicalizing Islamic Australian children online. And that came out at one of our parliamentary inquiries in which, yes, we radicalized this child to get them to do something so that we can then arrest them later on. Well, why aren't these ASIOs and intelligence apparatus, why aren't they being arrested for inciting terrorism? Because I, as a citizen, if I incited violence with a post online and someone else did something based off my words, I'd be the person at fault there. But governments get a free pass on this. So how much of these school shootings in America aren't also being influenced by, say, children chatting to feds on online, on back channels, and being influenced to do these things. We honestly don't know. And this is the concern, that all these things start stacking up. The appearance of America having a poor gun culture, air quotes, or a violent streak, and we need to protect the children. It's all stacking up to, it's the Hegelian dialectic. They present the problem and they've got the solution waiting in the wings.
Yeah, and they are the problem. They're the problem. We're the solutions. They're the problem. And what is even funnier, though, is when you said, you take an influx of all these people and everything, and they're like, oh, we got to help these minority people, and they consider them to be minority. What are they doing with the Aboriginal race there? Do they give two shits about them?
This is the contentious issue in this country, that we have this First Nations people that we pride ourselves on is the longest living continual culture for over 60,000 years. And the government spends a lot of money protecting Aboriginal people, their health and everything. But everything the government does seems to backpedal and make issues worse. The more money they spend, the outcomes are getting worse and worse for our First Nations peoples. And all that does, it's the same thing. The average, say, Anglo-Australian sees how much money, how much tax breaks, how many things are being afforded to First Nations peoples, and they're working their asses off just to pay the bills. They see that, and then it starts a hatred again. We're seeing this division being caused because our First Nations people are being treated differently, which I understand there's an issue with colonization and trauma that's associated with that. But there's a certain point where you need to collectively come together and move on a little bit. You can't keep victimizing the victim. That in itself just breeds more trauma. And we see that as a country now, that we've got some very vocal people within the First Nations and Aboriginal communities that are talking out against this. They're saying, you got to stop holding these people's hands all the time. Take the training wheels off. We might fumble. We might fall over it time and time again. We don't need the hand out. We need the hand up. The handouts aren't working. So we need the hand up. That's what we need. And
the hand down, not pulling us up.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And, that we have the same thing over here. We put all of our natives on a reservation, and I'm like, well, we gave you land. It's like, but no, they used to have it all. What you gave them was problems, and you keep continuously giving them problems, and then you restrict their access to certain things, and it makes it even worse because they don't have. They're going under the same thing. Like, they are being subjected to the same shit. They're being encroached on all over again. They're being taken advantage of all over again. They're being told, no, we got to have this, that, and the other. They're living it the same way as everybody else. Like, well, we can't have this, but they can. So again, it's falling back on the stuff that our government is saying, being just, you want to say it's not hidden. It's blatant hypocrisy. And it's so obvious what the hell is going on. And there's just too many races here for them to try to say otherwise. You can't just blame it on white U.S. citizens.
Yeah,
So,
America's in the unique position where you're that old of a country, even though you still are quite young in comparison to, say, Europe and other parts of the world. But you've had a steady immigration policy for the United States that's happened over a long time that people have integrated quite well. They consider themselves American. When you get someone who's maybe second or third born generation American from, say, I don't know, Cambodia or India or Mexico, and their families worked their asses off, paid their taxes, and built something for themselves as a family, and then new illegals get in the country and are handed everything, that's when those angers start to stir up. And that's when these people go, hang on, I'm an American, my family's worked our asses off, we don't like this. And that's what they don't want to see. They don't want to see melanated people who are diverse Americans, air quotes, pushing back on this. They want the stereotypical founding stock American, European, the WASPs, They want them to freak out so that they can make it look like, you said before, the racist white American needs their guns taken away. If an Asian American turns around and does something like this, they'd probably say it was a mental illness issue and it had nothing to do with race.
And that's exactly what they're going to do. They're going to be like, oh, you know, but they're not even going to make it a story. They're going to be like, you know, we can't, you know, we're not publicizing that. We're just going to sweep that underneath the rug. We're going to keep it low profile as possible. We're not going to say anything too much about this. And if anybody does bring it up, we're going to make sure to oppress it to where it doesn't get the audience it normally would.
Well, look at the rooftop Koreans, right? The rooftop Koreans are very well known as an historical precedent, but it still gets bypassed very quickly because they're Korean people. If it was a bunch of good old boys on a roof with guns indiscriminately shooting African Americans, that would be taught in every history class in the United States, every school, every elementary school, as the biggest sign of racism in America. But because they're Korean guys, you know, it's a bit of a joke, rooftop Koreans. It's a bit of a laugh now, but it's no different. The race doesn't really change things. It's the optics around it that the government wants to push and play.
Right. Well, and they can now with their, you know, AI, everything. So now you don't even, just like how they tried to play it with the whole cat eating situation. They're like, oh, that's fake video. Okay. Is the cop fake? Was he fake? Can we interview the cop? Was, you know, the mugshots, were they fake?
The police reports that anyone can access?
Right. It was public record. Is everything else, you know, you can only rely on that so much. So, again, if this is going to be the problem, they're like, we got to take this damn social media away, or we need to monitor these phones, because even with our phones, we can send it to each other. I can email you this stuff and it'll spread. And that's a problem for them too. And that's why, you know, as well, how England was like, well, we're going to come to the US and get you, which really, you know, unless it's something damning you have against a politician, I mean, it's not going to happen. You can come over here and we're really not going to take you seriously at all. I mean, are you going to get a weapon issued to you like when you get here? Are you allowed to have that when you get here? Because you're going to need one, because we're not going to take you seriously at all.
I was going to say, the last time a Brit tried that, it was King George, and he got his ass kicked by a bunch of farmers with pitchforks. And now those said farmers have AR-15s and all sorts of other goodies. So I don't think any MI6 agent, even with the backing of feds in America, is going to fare well if they try to start arresting Americans en masse for social media posts.
Oh, it's like our dog could take care of the problem before we have to come outside. It's not going to happen. But that's, you know, that's a thing that they want to be able to do. It's just like, well, you know, you sent this information to a person in a different country, and so that violated that country's laws, and so now not only the person receiving it is going to receive some violation, but we need to do something to the person that sent it as well. And that's going to be their point of contention too, is they can shut down all the media they want and try to restrict that in each individual country, but you still have the phones that are able to receive messages from other countries. So I could probably see them trying to cut that too, where like you're not going to be able to have certain communications with the US or any other country that they don't want you getting adverse information from.
Well, yeah, we see this happening now in Brazil, where there's VPN bans in place where you get fines for having one. And you can see they're very much trying to put the genie back in the bottle. The internet has exploded, and the interconnectivity that the world has at a moment's notice is absolutely astounding. You would consider it to be magic that I'm talking to you in Australia all the way into the United States at the same time, but we've got the means to do so. And it's this free, open communication which is the greatest threat to any kind of authoritarian regime, the elusive theys, whoever runs the things behind the scenes. They're desperately trying to cut this down. And we see that with the Misinformation, Disinformation Bill in Australia, in which it's going to be up to the government to dictate what is the truth and what is not. And they could turn around tomorrow, if the bill passes, and say the sky is purple. Anyone that says the sky is blue are spreading misinformation and you're in trouble. Now, that's a bit hyperbolic example, but that's the extent of the power that they can have. And if they decide what truth is, we're in a very, very dangerous position. And it's going to force people into the dark sides of the internet and channels and, so-called protected chat groups, because you've got no other option. When your own voice and speech is policed to the point where you have to actually think about and figure out whether you're saying something safe or not, you are literally in the Orwellian hellscape that people have been warning us about since the inception of the book. Like, this isn't anything new. It's been coming a long time, and I think it's been the boiling frog analogy. They've been progressively bringing in, say, laws, statutes, all these things along the way to subtly get people used to it. The amount of people that don't see this as a big concern is horrifying, because you could almost guarantee the wartime generation, the people that stormed the beaches of Normandy, the people who were fighting the Japanese in the South Pacific, these veterans would be rolling over in their graves seeing at the authoritarian measures our governments are taking against their grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren right now.
Mm-hmm. And they're always trying to keep up with whatever medium we end up using. And they'll try to cut this down, and it'll be the backpedaling that we use, like books. We'll just start putting the information in books, start publishing our own books. We won't need you to publish it. And then our books will be in the circulation. And they'll be like, well, you can't, it'll be a cut down and of printing material. So if anybody is having their own, like the printing presses in your own home, they're going to come raid that all over again. They're like, oh, no smoke signals and no tying pigeons with messages. It'll get back to that. And then, progressively we'll switch mediums again, and it'll cut. It's just like the tide. It goes in, it goes out. So they keep on trying to chase what we're doing, even though it's going to happen anyway. It's like, well, when is the cycle going to stop?
And this is the thing. These are all cycles. We've seen this happen again and again throughout history. It may not be exactly the same. History doesn't necessarily repeat, but it definitely rhymes. And we're in that rhyming circle now of our speech and our thoughts are being policed to a point which we would consider to be, USSR Russia, maybe the Nazi Party during the height of Germany. But we're seeing it happening now, and we've got the historical precedents. We remember history. We're more tuned in as a public now to the examples of the past than ever. We're a very educated population at the moment, but this education seems to be being thrown away, where we're almost giving away our ability to think to influencers. We're looking to someone else for the answer. In the past, it used to be the church, the kings, then it became democratically elected governments, prime ministers, presidents, and now we're moving into the popularist stage. And I think we've almost circumvented the likes of a Trump, and we've gone directly to the influencer. And by that, I mean anyone who's a content creator. Ironically, yes, I do get the laugh in this that it's also podcasters, because I am one. But we're going to other people for information. At very best, the majority of the time, we're getting tertiary knowledge. We're not even getting secondary knowledge. We're getting someone else's opinion that's been filtered through their own lens and then disseminated to us. If we don't have our own discernment and double check people's work, we could be led down a path to oblivion. And we see that now, where a large group of listeners, which I include myself, I listen to a lot of content creators as well, but we've all kind of cottoned on that the big platform names that are put out there are owned, or at very least controlled in some manner. The likes of an Alex Jones, Stu Peters, all these type of people who are very popular, they are controlled in some way. So then people go, oh, okay, well, I can't trust the big names because they're just too big. They can't possibly be not controlled. I'll filter down to the smaller names, the smaller people, thinking that's a safe place. But there is such a thing as micro-influencers, which you shared with me something today that's just horrifying. Can you go into that to some detail, please?
Yeah, and what's worse is this started when Obama was here. So it started then where they knew they had to switch mediums because the chat rooms were being their problem. So they had to put together a task force of some people who were able to go in and converge, like go undercover and get into these chat rooms and influence these people. Or like, with the kids, you target and radicalize. And, especially with the Q movement, we all know, except for the people who are in that cult, we know that is a government op to make conspiracy theorists look like retards. And it's like, nah, we all don't fall for the cult. We can see that there are cults. We're not stupid. But, there are people who don't go into it and research it enough. So it was kind of like an open door for agents to go in and do this. So when it became apparent, especially because, again, we switched from TV over to streaming services, you're not getting ad revenue. Nobody wants to see commercials. So, oh God, we're going to have to start some way placing ads. Well, if we're all watching YouTube and we are able to skip through the ads, another good way is, what? This person right here seems to have a lot of people who follow them. And every time they say something, for some reason, these people go out there and they do it or they buy it. And it's like, okay, we're going to start this way. We can get them to promote or mention ideas, narratives, to steer these people thinking or doing a certain way. And even with the introduction of like bots and AI, it makes it a little bit all too easy as well, because some people will think that is a real person and they can radicalize certain thoughts, and they can use algorithms to pinpoint who these people are who are more able to be persuaded or influenced, and then target that group. And then they will be the next group that they're like, oh, like they do that, all these right-wing podcasters are saying that we're targeting them based on their audience. And it's like, well, you kind of are. And
can I give you an example of this exact thing that's popped up recently? Are you familiar with Donnie Darkened or Donnie Discerned on Twitter at all?
A little bit, yeah.
He's a gentleman who I would consider to be a micro influencer. He had a big following, but nothing overly big to be something I'd consider to be an Alex Jones or a like. But he's a gentleman who came out very anonymously, had this AI version of his face, never showed his face. Very well spoken, very articulate, very knowledgeable in scripture and theology. So he was directly tying into the Christian movement worldwide. But he was hitting on a few key notes that I've noticed have been popularized and hitting very high in the algorithm, which seemed targeted to me. The Nephilim talk, the Antichrist talk. He was very outspoken against Trump being the possible Antichrist. And as a Christian and someone who studies theology, yes, there are a lot of things that do line up with Trump being a personality that could be that. That was great. So I entertained this guy and his posts and read them and went through it. But I never really had that inkling that this guy was a true representation of himself. Well, it came out in the last week or so after he debated someone that his real name is Mark Lutchman, and Mark Lutchman is a very pro Republican, very pro-Trump, where he's been playing both sides. He has a platform where he's himself, shows his face, promotes the Republican Party, Trump's the savior, and on the other side he was covering his face up, being an anonymous, saying that Trump's the Antichrist, drawing in this huge, big following of Christians who I would consider to fall into my realm of thinking that they're non-denominational. They think there's control mechanisms in the man-made church. So they're looking to people to listen to, looking for some guidance on things. And he started to pivot away from Trump being the Antichrist to Trump's the savior again. And I think that was all a mechanism to draw in, say, the fundamentalist Christian right, the Christians who don't necessarily trust governments or Trump and were drawing them back into an election cycle. And he got caught out on it. He got caught with his pants down. And this is just one small example of that. So these micro influencers are a really big concern. You've actually sent me some links, and I'm going to share them on the screen at the moment. For the listeners, I apologize. This isn't usually a video podcast, but I'll read out the titles and some of it, and we can just go through these one at a time. Brandy, what do you think?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just a boomer over here with technology. There we go.
12 seconds later.
Okay, here we go. So here's the first link you sent me. Igniting action through digital communities. Now, this doesn't at all sound like it's a platform for almost a rent-a-crowd type of situation like we've seen governments do around the world. They hire actors for protests to set the public discourse. But now, like you said earlier, we're starting to see this in the digital space. And this company is certainly doing that. How did you come across this one?
I came across it when I was going through the Obama links and looking at the Cass Sunstein, where they were putting in place all these agents and setting up campaigns. And then it came over to where the White House was paying influencers directly to push people to wear masks and get vaccines. And there was one ad campaign specifically in New Jersey, and the city of New Jersey had gone through ZOMAD, these people right here, to get some influencers to make people wear masks and go get a vaccine. And the president of that company, his quote specifically said that he always looks for the nano and the micro influencers because people don't look at them like a hired gun. And I was like, that's some pretty choice wording right there. That tells on you so much. I was like, this is a marketable thing now. And come to find out, it is. There is a lot of these people, a lot. TikTok has its own management team for creators. And that palette management is definitely one of them as well. And that little Harry Sison, that whoever the hell, he's such a little peon. He is in one of those in that palette management group. So he does get paid to say the stupid shit that he actually says. And so do these people on here. And with ZOMAD, they have this thing called the plug. And it lets different brands, governments, organizations come in and pitch something that they want hashtagged or something they want plugged. And when you go on the plug, it'll have, their featured collaborations, and people can submit their platform or their audience or, their all their different profiles. Like if you're on YouTube, all that, you can apply for one of those collaborations with that company or that department, State Department, whatever campaign is going on, to get paid to push that ad campaign.
So this is just essentially the digital version of Mad Men, isn't it? ZOMAD. And it's just very ironic that the Mad's in their name. It's an advertising agency for NGOs, governments, and brands that they have a clientele of people that they pay and use, influencers, micro-influencers. And they pick people who fit the bill of what they want to advertise. And I'm just noticing that on this representation that igniting action through digital communities, the people that they're showing there are very racially ambiguous. You've got different demographics there. Not a single white man. Very interesting. Just pointing that out. But you can see that they've got a pretty good diverse clientele there. So if they ever want to say, push African-American rights, they'll find an African-American guy on their list of men who may tick a few boxes. If I'm a government representative, Brandy, I would approach you and say, I want to stir up the conversation around reparations and what it means for the future of African-American men. Who have you got on your books? And I want this person to be well-educated, an ex-football player, and all these things. And they'll go, okay, let's go through our back catalogue and see who we've got on the books. and they'll find someone close enough to what you want to start pushing out the message they're getting paid to push.
And I will say that, yeah, they have a blog on here, and they will go through all their little campaigns that they're so proud of. And one of them happened to be one of the BLM blogs where they listed the proper ways to protest and all the different organizations they suggest you donate to.
I'm even just looking at this little clip at the bottom. They've got a story, and it's titled "The Future of Media Buying: Mass Local Influencer Activations by the Hundreds." The only ever time I've heard activations is when it comes to a MK Ultra type of thing where you activate an assassin or you activate someone within the community to do heinous things. This is like spy, spooky stuff. But activating influencers by the hundreds. Between data privacy regulations, generational change in content consumption, social media platform turbulence, and more, digital media buying is undergoing the most change in decades, and they are leading the change on this. Wow, good find, Brandy. This is nuts. I knew that this stuff happened with physical people at protests for Rent-A-Crowd and the like, but this is crazy. I always knew that the big Apple people, the big talking heads that are in the, say, alternative media community were co-opted to some degree, but they're even hitting it boots on the ground with these so-called micro-influencers. So it really makes me wonder how much they're actually making off this, whether it's a pittance, are they doing it across multiple platforms, or what's the incentive here? Besides
Money.
cold hard cash. Like, are they making bigger money than they're making out as micro-influencers then?
If they're a good one, yeah, why not? And then if they're able to push several at the same time, and as you said with Donnie Darko there, if they can take on different personalities on different platforms, oh, even better. This one I'm looking at here, they're praising Ben and Jerry's for their DEI and all this other stuff, and one of their headlines is amplifying Black narratives. Narrative is not exactly a good thing. Narrative implies that it is written by the government for the
Made
government.
up. Nano and micro influencers in demand. This is CNBC Tech News. CNBC's Kate Rogers joins Money Movers to discuss how companies are enlisting creators with smaller followings, known as nano and micro influencers, to help market products and services. Social media influencers playing big role in the 2024 election. With over 200 social media influencers flocking to the Democratic National Convention, Julia Borstein takes on a look at how online creators could be playing a key role in the outcome of this year's election. At what point is this not considered in... how's this influencership not considered as election fraud or election tampering?
Or incitement?
Incitement, yes. Like, how many of these people are on the payroll during the Black Lives Matter burning down of cities across America with George Floyd?
A lot. I would say a lot. And I'm getting ready to send you this one link directly about stuff like that, because why would you put that out there? Why would you put that out there? You are giving specific places to have people donate or volunteer to. Like, where, and it only, like we do when we go and read stuff, when we read businesses that are reaping the benefits, we search who all is affiliated with these businesses that this company is trying to push. And the first thing they did is the resources for creating change and supporting justice for Black America. So, of course, they tried to put the spin on it, but it is a BLM article. And it was like, to help with the volunteering, there are a few websites that you can help match you to the volunteering opportunities. And then it has donate to organizations, and it gives all the organizations like the ACLU, donate to BLM, all these. Why would they even? When they just, like, the BLM we know is corrupt as hell. But they're like, no, we encourage you to go online and encourage other people to donate to these causes. And we need you to volunteer for these places. And we need you to sign petitions on these ones that we have. Go out there and push this. Share these resources and these specific books and these specific films and these specific podcasts.
Well, just looking at one of these dot points here, the Bail Project. The Bail Project is a non-profit organization designed to combat mass incarceration by disrupting the money bail system, one person at a time. This is literally the Black Lives Matter protesters being arrested during burning down cities events, mostly peaceful protesting, and then being let out the next day.
Yes.
Excuse me. My goodness. And this is the thing. A lot of this stuff does lean towards a left-wing side of politics, but you'd be nuts to think that the same thing isn't happening on the right side of the spectrum as well.
Which they're usually funded by the same people. And those people have no concern about left or right. They just need their money to get where it needs to go in order to make them more money.
Let's just look at some of these books that they've suggested, though, Brandy. So, like you said, they've suggested places you can donate to. They've got the books and the films. Here's the titles of the books. How to be an anti-racist. So you want to talk about race. Just mercy. White fragility. Why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism. Mindful of race, transforming racism from the inside out. America's original sin. Sister outsider. Your silence will not protect you. They're definitely pumping the idea that all white people are racist through this type of campaign, aren't they? And when you've got influencers pushing this out to impressionable young minds, this is the perceived reality they're going to get, because not only is the influencer cool and hip and suggesting this stuff, but it almost validates their claims that, look at all these authors that have written about this. If there's this many books, it all must be true. And this is just a really concerning pivot in the information war and the psychological campaign being waged across, citizens across the world. This is wild, absolutely wild.
You scroll down, you'll see exactly the point that they wanted to tie into is vote. Right in the middle.
There it is. Again, your voice matters. Who you vote for can help you change policies in the future. Learn about your local politicians. Look at their voting history. Read about their policies and learn about what they stand for before casting your vote. They just keep bringing people back into this dialectic of you can vote your way out of situations. Vote harder, idiots. Just vote harder and it'll solve all your problems. Wow. And this is why I'm so black-pilled at the moment, Brandy, because you know what? I don't besmirch this as being an actually really well put campaign and psyop on the population. This is really well done. This is polished. This is pretty clever. And you can see why people who aren't as, awake, and I hate using that term, awake to the bullshit of governments and their psyops and things that they push out on their populace, this is a really polished mechanism to get people to fall for it.
I just call it being hyper aware. Like at this point, there's even division among what we consider, our genre of like-minded people, or just our genre of people altogether who are aware. Like we have gone beyond being just aware. Now we are hyper aware to where we can't even watch an ad. We can't even hear a word, and we will know that word has been said one too many times. And now we already know that's a weaponized word. Like this new stupid freaking word I keep hearing people use. And it's, oh, that is so demure. Will you shut the fuck up? Shut the fuck up. This is one of those goddamn algorithm words that they want to test out there to see how many of y'all idiots keep fucking using it for no reason at all. Shut up. It is so easy to track people with phrasing, with words, with what they spend more time, in which more people spend more time arguing back or replying to trigger points than they do encouraging actual points that they agree with. So using those words. And it's just, if I hear it one too many times, I'm like, nope, it's a government word. It's going to be brought up for some stupid reason. And I know it's just one of them track and trace situations. And I'm a data analyst, so I know this. I know you're just hyper aware. You can't watch a movie because 3 minutes into it, you're already disgusted because you already brought up woke stuff. I know where this is going. You can't enjoy anything because you see it all.
Hyper aware is a much better term. I'm going to be cognizant to try and use that. Hopefully it doesn't pop up in the media too often, hyper aware. But we've seen this, Brandy, can you remember that clip that was going around at the height of COVID where it had 50 different news bases in the States, different channels? This is a threat to our democracy. This is a threat to our democracy. A threat to our democracy. In sync. Yep. Someone got the memo. To think that big media corporations get a memo and now they're doing the same thing with micro-influencers, that's probably got a much bigger impact, rather, because no one's watching the mainstream media or the news anymore. So many people disseminate their news from alternative media or the micro-influencers. No one watches the nightly news. So they know where the battlefield is, and I think they could be winning at this point if they've rolled this stuff out and the hyper-aware people aren't catching onto it yet. So you're doing a good job for the people out there, Brandy. Could I say that you have a demure approach to this?
Ma'am. But they fiery, but yeah, you can use the nice word.
Yeah, I'll just use the new buzzword that they're using, and maybe it'll boost the algorithm. What a crazy time to be alive. You can only imagine that the propaganda back in the day when it was just the radio and the newspaper, that was just the ultimate form of control, because what was in print was the news, that was the truth. But now we're in this situation where we can go out and source history. We can look at it through our own eyes. We can run it through the filter of our own discernment, our own political views, our own understanding of the world. That's what got away from them. They're now trying to control that by influencing people through personalities, through content creators, because the mainstream establishment that's existed since the inception of the television, that is rotting away now. That is all but dead. The internet is a battlefield. It used to be the Wild West for being able to access information at a fingertip. I now see it as it's the trenches in World War I. It's no man's land. And you have to figure out when they're going to drop the mustard gas, because there's enough psyops going on here that you could be engaging with it on a daily basis and not even know, because it's your podcaster you follow, or it's your Twitter influencer that you like seeing TikTok reels of. You have to be very cognizant and, like you said, hyper aware. You really need to look into yourself and look at the content of the people you're following and ask yourself some really hard questions. Could this person be exploiting me for government's gain, for an NGO's gain, for their own grifting gain even? Mm-hmm. What is this person doing that shows me they are a true, tangible, honest person? What do they do? And that's where it comes back to. It doesn't matter what your skin color is, even what political side of things you lean on, as long as the value of you and your character is an honest, open person, I couldn't care what you look like or what your personal beliefs are. As long as you're open and transparent, there's no issues.
Exactly. Because I don't think that, anybody is going to go against feeding their own family, being able to take care of themselves, being able to take care of their family, being able to do for themselves, being able to go outside and express themselves freely, being able to get in their car and get to listen to what it is that they want to listen to on the radio, instead of being force-fed propaganda and political ads 24 hours a day. I mean, nobody likes being in an oppressive state, period. So I don't care what your personal preferences are when you're at home, because I don't have to live with you. But we all have a fundamental need to care for ourselves and to care for those that we love around us. And that is what's being attacked. It has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with, they want you so confused, tired, broken, mentally, physically, and spiritually that you have no choice but to give up.
And I think this is what they've done an absolute number. And I'm an 80s baby, grew up in the 90s, but even I still grew up with the term sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Yes, people can say some pretty disgusting things and you can take it to heart, but we were still raised with a level of resilience. If someone's spouting, say, some truly horrific racist things towards you, you have to think about what's wrong with that person in their life that they've come to that worldview, put it behind you. Like, I couldn't care if someone called me a cracker or a ginger or a ranger, as they call us down here in Australia. It's water off a duck's back. And if you get to the point in your life where you see someone's made a post on social media that's expressing their opinion, and that impacts you in such a way that you feel the need to bring charges on that person, I'm sorry, but you've fallen for a psychological operation of the government because you have no resilience left. You are not a person anymore.
And I hate to call it is what it is, but it's these vaccine injured babies that have to have their labels to protect them. And they're the ones that are being told, well, if you call me this, then that means that I can't be a person. Like, that word will make me not exist anymore.
Yeah. The dehumanizing term that they're throwing around.
How is it dehumanizing you when you can literally get off your damn phone, shut off the laptop, go outside, and be free of everybody who was so-called dehumanizing you? Like, when you walk into a grocery store, if somebody confronts you right in your face and is an asshole, okay, that's a legitimate situation. Handle that as it comes. But if it's somebody you don't know and they're on the internet, there's got to be a point where you're like, look, this 24-hour-a-day access, you are hurting your own damn feelings.
Well,
you are choosing to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, choice is a big one. Isn't it George Carlin that came across, or one of the great American comedians, who said that offense is a choice? You're choosing to be offended. If you're going on to, say, a public space, like that is now deemed a public space under the Queensland new law that's passed, if you're going onto social media and you're deliberately seeking out and looking at posts that make you uncomfortable or upset, that is still your choice to do so. No one's forcing you to go online and look at other people's opinions or other people's point of views. It's your choice to look at it, your choice to be offended. So where's the real fault here? It becomes self-harm at that point. If you're choosing to self-harm, there's bigger issues there.
Yes, there is. So you can say that your neurospiciness means that you're overstimulated by the lights in the store, and so that store needs to dim them certain days so that you can go shopping, and that somebody beside you can't wear that lotion because it overstimulates your senses and it's offending you all you want. But if you are reading and what you are reading is offending you, you can walk away from it. Do what is best for you. You're not taking care of yourself that way. And that means, yes, whether you like it or not, you have a mental health issue. Self-harm is a mental health issue. It is a diagnosed issue that you should go seek therapy for.
It's almost as if these institutions, governments, NGOs, influencers around the world, they're creating their own version of reality. There's objective reality, which we see, breathe, and feel every day. And they're putting some kind of crude approximation of what they think it should be over the top. And they make it so hard for us to move away from that or ignore it, because it does start to intertwine with every aspect of our life. Once this stuff gets ratified and put into laws, it is very hard to escape. It is very hard to ignore. We know what the objective reality is, but once your speech and your opinion and your ability to, say, rebuke bad ideas with good ideas, and you've got your receipts and you've got your evidence, if that means nothing and the government can dictate terms on what is truth, what is hate speech, what is real, what is not, we are in for a hell of a fight. And I think we passed that line a very long time ago, and they are keeping the collective outrage from bubbling to the surface by drawing out the electoral, the democratic voting process for a little bit longer to make things far worse than they already are. And when that bubble bursts, look out. We are going to see some absolutely horrific scenes that we've only ever heard about in history, or read in history, rather.
Yeah, because here it's like relatively calm. Like, it's relatively calm. Like, we haven't like stood up and fought back to the extent that I'm sure they wish that we would at all. So when it gets to that point, that's probably going to be a whole different kind of situation.
Yes, I think my greatest fear is that they've been so incremental in doing this and subtly bringing these changes, these laws and these terms in, that for the majority of us who aren't self-aware of what's going on, it's been so minute that people are almost immunized against it. They just take it on board of this is the reality and this is fine, when they have lived experiences and memories that are completely counter to it. And they are literally building people's reality in their subconscious. And that's the scary part, that the people who aren't self-aware and aware of what's going on
are living in a different world.
They are living in a very different world, Brandy. And it makes it even scarier when you've got grifters and content creators out there that are being paid to put out a message that genuinely isn't their own. And these are the people that are hope for some. People are looking for answers, looking for at least alternative views to what's going on to reinforce their own ideas. And if what they're getting is force-fed propaganda that they don't realize, it makes it even worse.
Yeah, because that means that they're weaponizing information, which we already know. InfoWars. Alex Jones told you what he wanted. He didn't even try to hide it. Right out there. Like, that's where you get your information from. Okay. Did you bother looking it up? Did you look it up at all? Did you read any bit of it, or did you just take it at will? And if you're taking it at will, then, you can't say anything about your grandma watching the news. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's just different perspectives. Their generation were just so dogmatically patriotic, believing in the system, the mechanisms of power there for the best interest. They wouldn't second guess it or question it. We are almost in that same way in our kind of circles, that the alternative media, air quotes, for the broad majority, they're the ones you can trust because they've got that fancy little word alternative at the front. So that just negates all the possible psyops that they could bring on us. But it's the same thing repackaged. They're just presenting to us the same mechanisms of control and influence that every other generation's had. It's just the new shiny version of it.
Yeah, they're the ones that came up with the label. You just chose to take their label and apply it to yourself, because even the conspiracy theorists, that was, a government label. Truthers, government label. It's a government label.
I think we've just got to go straight back to smoke signals and pigeons for information and really get ahead of the curve. It's the only way now. We've got to go really grassroots and archaic on this.
I've said that. It's like, you know what? With everything that keeps disappearing and them removing, you're going to have to make your own digital library, all these books, because I think even it was within the past couple weeks, Archives now is being forced to give their information on who gets what books off their website.
Horrifying. So, and you take into account that there's Google Drives now, which are being flagged by Google as having sensitive information, and they're removing your content. And if they deem it to be breaking any national laws of the country that you're a sovereign citizen of, they are forwarding that onto authorities. Wild times.
You're going to have to print this stuff off before it's gone and have paper information. You're just going to have to do it. You're going to have a thumb drive with a digital library, because it's going to be gone, and people are not going to be able to access that information. And then when you go into Web Archive and try to pull up that information, now they are logging that, saying, okay, we're going to be able to go back and we're going to be able to use this against you in a job interview, that you looked up certain political views or certain ideals or certain spiritual beliefs that don't align with our company, and so we can't hire you.
Yes, this is just pure insanity that we're in an age where all of this is just coalescing at the same point. But we know what the next step is. Once the digital book burning happens, that's when we see physical book burnings. I think it's a novel called Fahrenheit 911 or something along those lines, in which the story is there's firemen, and their job as a fireman is to go around to buildings and find subversive books and burn them in the streets. Information the government doesn't like, they're destroying, because the last vestiges of truth and freedom are in physical print, and that's what's being targeted. And that's the natural cycle. We've seen it throughout history. The burning of the Alexandrias, the Nazi book burnings in Weimar Republic, which I do believe were burning books of some horrific nature. But you get the point. Governments go after information they disagree with, even if it's in physical form. And I think that's coming next. But unfortunately, Brandy, I don't think the smoke signals are going to work, especially for people in Britain, considering there's a British chimney tax of £300 a month. They're just outlawing smoke at this point. No smoke signals for the British.
This is something I seen, and this is how you should probably, everybody who sees stuff like this should work. I seen it, and I was like, that's got to be a joke. That can't be true. So I flipped off of one platform, went on another, and was like, let me look this up. And I kid you not, I feel so bad. I feel so like the UK is just going through it. Just, what do you mean? You can't heat your own home because they're going to be measuring the amount of smoke that you put out. And if you violate it, they are going to fine you. And they are going to do it because you are using some caveman way of heating your home, and you need to get the government issued new fireplaces that won't produce that much smoke. And I'm like, okay, you just told your homeless people all during the winter that they can go die, because you're going to find the shit out of them, because they're not going to be able to keep warm. Are you going to also find the illegals that you brought in? Because probably fucking not.
This is probably the kicker, Brandy. Sorry, they're going to essentially it's to do with the greenhouse emissions and the whole green scam. They're going to give you an alternative to firewood, and in the meantime, they're probably going to be some kind of mass-produced, chemically infused block that you burn similar to firewood, and God knows what that's actually putting out into the atmosphere. But they'll charge you for it, and that's the only option you'll have. And then they'll force people onto electric. And if you've got the majority of people on, say, electric heating, and the power goes out during winter, how many people are you going to have start dropping dead?
They're going to give you asbestos bricks and be like, here, burn these.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. They're just not burning as well as I thought they would. Strange. Well, Australia has something very similar. In my state, they outlawed gas production for new houses. So if you have about deciding to build a brand new house and you want liquid petroleum gas for, say, your stove or for your heating, illegal, can't do it anymore. And the houses that do currently have gas, they want to phase people out, and they're offering cash incentives to transfer over to electric.
Yeah, no, I'd say over here, most people would prefer a gas stovetop, but we do have, and it hadn't really been put out there too much. This is just another me being nosy and reading information thing. They have this dishwasher thing that they're going to try to come out with, where they swear to God your dishwasher is just using too much damn water. So they're going to like ban all these dishwashers from a certain year back, which, just like our light bulbs, they could be like, oh, it's this year on back. So you could just now buy this damn dishwasher. And they're going to be like, no, man, you use 1 gallon too much. We don't care if it only uses 3 gallons a year. It only needs 1.5 gallons. That's all you need. Just spit on them dishes and get them the hell up out of there. You have to get this new dishwasher. And if we see that you're using too much water, we're going to come out there and, take a look where it's leaking at. I think it's I don't even use a dishwasher, but A dishwasher?
It's just every aspect of life, isn't it? And this
Yeah.
is why being hyper aware at times is very blackpilling, but I've had to switch my thinking recently. I think being blackpilled is actually a good thing because it shows you're hyper aware. If you can see through the minutia of the psyops and the propaganda and the information war that's being waged upon us, you're actually in a really good spot. You have the ability to sift through all the disinformation, all the lies and the psyops that are currently being perpetrated on the population. If you can see through it, that's great. I'm calling black pills now coal. Coal that stokes the furnace of freedom and the ability to live as a sovereign person. And I don't use that as a throwaway line as a sovereign citizen type of jargon. As a real, tangible person who has their own thoughts, their own beliefs, and their own way they look at the world. You have to keep yourself going somehow. And for me at the moment, it is noticing all these things. And I'm banking a bunch of these black pills for myself, and I'm using that to keep me going because there's no way to go back to being a red pilled or a blue pilled moment because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And what you do with it determines how you're going to move forward. It can be very depressing for some people, but I do encourage you, if you are feeling black pilled, use it like fuel. Have conversations like I've had tonight with Brandy. Have conversations with family and friends about it. You have to approach it a certain way because these people may not be hyper aware and see these things. But I think the more momentum we get to seeing through the lies and the literal spells they're casting on people through media and influences, the better we're all going to be. You have to realize there's a problem before you can actually address it. And at the moment, I think the ship that is civilization is sinking so slowly that people don't notice. But my feet are certainly wet, and I know that something's going on.
Well, it puts you in the position of being an observer versus a participant. And when you're an observer, you know where to step and you know where not to step. So, that gives you a great navigation tool as to prepare yourself accordingly before you step outside into an environment. You know what to equip yourself with. You already know if you're in this certain environment with these people, what to say, what not to say, what to keep to yourself. Don't go out there expending all your energy to people who do not have the ability to not only listen, but to even understand. If they can't see what you can see, forcing the picture on them is not going to make them understand it enough to see what you're looking at. Don't even try it. Don't even try.
You come across as a Bible thumper in a lot of analogies, don't you? A lot of ways. It's like you're pushing a belief system on someone that's not ready to hear it or wants to hear it.
Well, it's just like, if you introduced their so-called caveman to the cell phone, there's no way for him to be able to understand that it's a phone, that the people in it are not evil, or that the voices coming from it isn't demonic possession, and that you using it doesn't make you a witch. There's no context for them they've not made that leap yet. So you can force it on them all you want. They're still going to just use it as a hammer. So what's the point? Like, you just wasted all your time and energy when you could have used that to gain more knowledge or get yourself more prepared. So just stop wasting your energy. That's not what is there for. Your energy is to further you and help you and lead by example, not beat people into submission. If that were the case, you'd be a politician.
Exactly right. Brandy, what a wonderful place to finish this conversation. Thank you for coming on and indulging me with this very black-pilled conversation, but I definitely needed it after the recent events that have happened in Australian law and bills being proposed. And it's good to know there are people out there who are hyper-aware, know what's going on, so that we can have these conversations. For the listeners who don't already know you, you are on Twitter, on X, and you put out some very, very well put out posts that open up people's eyes to a lot of this stuff, even if it's for consideration to look into. Where can they follow you on Twitter? What's your handle?
It's at AKA_Brandy Renee.
There we go, guys. And to everyone out there, don't be afraid to be black-pilled at times. Use it like fuel to keep yourself going. Stoke those fires in the furnace of freedom, and have a great night.
Hey everybody, it's closing time. You don't gotta go home, but you can't stay here.